Hi, I'm Kern Trembath, founder and owner of Helios Coffee. We work in San Francisco and more particularly on Treasure Island, which is right in the middle of the Oakland-San Francisco Bay. I'm going to do something today that might be pretty foolish. I'm going to ask you to consider changing your behavior, at least some of you. First, though, let me say very clearly, I do not intend to offer, nor am I offering, any medical advice. I'm the wrong kind of doctor to do that. Medical things are between you and your physician, and that's exactly where they belong. So don't take anything here as medical advice, because it isn't. Instead, it's gastronomic or gustatory advice. I love that word. Advice on how to maximize your enjoyment of eating and drinking. A lot of people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and older, people like me, whose coffee drinking habits were largely shaped by an American culture in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, that drank pretty awful coffee because it was all that was available to them. And they drank and drink coffee primarily for its caffeine content. You go to bed at night, you have a good night's sleep, you get up waking a little slow and sludgy, so you make coffee to jumpstart your morning and quickly get up to speed. Every pun intended. In other words, they, or perhaps you, see coffee as an EDS, energy delivery system. Let me say right off the bat, EDS is probably the worst reason to drink coffee. And I say this as a person whose income is dependent precisely on persons who drink coffee. Don't do it for this reason. Coffee is not primarily a drug. It's primarily a food, or a drink, but in this context, the two are identical. It's a complete misuse of coffee to use it as an EDS. If you need drugs to get you going in the morning, A, see your physician immediately, and B, don't use coffee. We've all heard that coffee has caffeine and that caffeine is a stimulant. And there's only one thing wrong with that sentence. It's false. Caffeine is not a stimulant. This might surprise you, and if so, stay tuned. Your body produces lots of natural neural stimulants or transmitters, and the names of the two most familiar ones, familiar to most of us, are dopamine and glutamate, whose natural release is most concentrated when you need them the most, that is, in the morning, when you just got up from sleep. And then they gradually decrease throughout the day because of the simultaneous increase of another bodily product called adenosine. The purpose of adenosine is to naturally slow the body down by slowing down the neurotransmissions of dopamine and glutamate, eventually to the point where you need sleep so that you don't overuse your body. Again, every pun intended, adenosine is a speed regulator. It's the body's way of making sure that you don't overuse the effects of dopamine and glutamate, the body's own energy transmitters. So, caffeine is not a stimulant. Instead, it suppresses your body's adenosine. But adenosine is your body's way of slowing you down. So, caffeine slows down what your body uses to slow down. And the net effect of this double negative is that you feel like you have more energy because your dopamine and glutamate are unregulated. The more caffeine you drink, the greater the effect of this double negative, and you feel very energized. Naturally so. The energy inputs were there all along because they were produced by your body. And so your body's natural energy transmitters are no longer blocked from transmitting energy, and they keep doing it until their regulator, adenosine, stops being blocked. Earlier, I referred to coffee as a food, and so here we can ask, well, what's the net effect of all this biochemistry on enjoying it as a food? To answer this, I think we can look at how and why we eat other foods to see if they shed any light on how and why we might consume this one. Deep down inside, we all know that we eat to get nourished. That is, we ingest foods so that our bodies will break it down into the components that it needs to function healthily. To use an example, we eat calcium-bearing foods biochemically in order to acquire the calcium that we need for healthy bones, teeth, hair, and so on. But come on, who gets up in the morning and opens a fridge and says, "I think I'll strengthen my teeth now"? No one. Instead, we drink milk because it's a hot day, or because it goes so well with Oreos, or because it's the best thing with cereal or oatmeal, whatever. We use it for reasons that are different from why we need it. We need it for bones and teeth, but we use it because it tastes good, because we enjoy it. Pretty sure you can see where I'm going here. Just like we drink milk primarily because of how it tastes rather than how it functions, so too coffee. We should drink it because of how it tastes rather than how it functions with dopamines, glutamates, and adenosines. But this is, of course, exactly what you're doing if you drink it because you need an energy jolt. Once again, if you think you need energy, see your doctor, see what she says, but drink coffee because it tastes good and comforts you. That is, it is comfortable both to drink and to have drunk. So if you enjoy drinking coffee, drink it when you want to enjoy it, regardless of what time of day it is, or what's going on in that complex dance of dopamines, glutamates, and adenosines inside of you, just like you do with drinking milk. I've been drinking coffee for nearly my entire adult life, although for very different reasons, the last couple of decades and the preceding ones. And so now if I feel like drinking some espresso late at night when I'm in bed and drinking and reading a good book, I do. About once every 3 years or so, it'll keep me up. And the other 1,000 nights, it doesn't. And so on those nights, I enjoy both the book and the espresso. What I'm not going to say here, of course, is that because I do things this way, so should you. That would be making two mistakes. The first is giving you medical advice, which I promise not to do because I am a teaching doctor and not a medical one. And the second would be giving medical advice based on one data point, me, which is just plain stupid. So don't do it because I do it. Instead, look inside yourself. Ask why you enjoy eating and drinking various foods when you do. Why do you drink milk when you do? Or eat cereal? Or eat apricots? Or drink beer? Or eat scrambled eggs? Or eat pork chops with mashed potatoes and Brussels sprouts? If your answers here include, because that's when I enjoy them, then apply that same logic to coffee. Drink it when you enjoy it, and not when you don't. In other words, treat coffee as what it is, which is a food. There's a lot of advice out there about the health effects of coffee, the totality of which, by the way, seems to show that it's just this kind of a miracle food. There's also warning signs out there, of course, especially about caffeine consumption on a day-to-day basis. And if you're concerned about that, or even if you're just plain interested in it, read those articles. Talk with your physician. Get her advice on how much you should be consuming, and then see how that advice acts and interacts with your own body, just like you would if we were talking about milk and pork chops. Don't regulate your coffee enjoyment based on how I do myself or how your great-grandparents did, since they didn't know any of this stuff. Instead, regulate your coffee enjoyment by how much you enjoy it, because it's comforting to drink and it's comforting to have drunk. If you're interested in the actual science of caffeine absorption and its effects, read the article linked below from the National Center for Biotechnology Information. Now, I'm heading to bed. I'm going to bring my favorite book, and I'm going to bring a mug of espresso.